Tēnā koutou te whānau o Auckland Unitarians. Tēnā koutou ngā manuheri. No mai haramai. Haramai ki tēnei whare karakia a te atua. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Every Sunday for 115 years, we have welcomed those who come every week and those who are just passing through or who are simply seeking solace. But this week, we've been doing that all week long. Who knew last week how we would be transformed by our decision as a faith community to offer sanctuary, or as I like to think about it, the sacrament of hospitality, to 10 students from India who are being scapegoated by a predatory and exploitive system they did not create. Students, I welcome you again this morning, as I have every morning all week, and will do so again tomorrow. It has been a pleasure to have you with us. I want to acknowledge that we naively thought we were doing this to help you in this difficult time. In truth, we have learned that we have joined you in partnership to spotlight an injustice that needs to be stopped. We have joined you in partnership to find the courage to make the world a little kinder, a little more compassionate, a little more loving. We have joined you in partnership to tear down the walls that divide and build bridges. One of the unexpected surprises this week has been the many others who have visited us, and most of them for the first time. Some are household names in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and represent the diverse country we have become. They have been artists, musicians, actors, politicians, trade union officials, religious leaders, who have come to offer solace and support. But there have been many more who are not public figures, but who felt called to bring food or money and a comforting word. For them all, I offer these opening words by Mel Harkrader Pine. Some came here looking for solace. Some came here and gave it to them. Some came here seeking music. Some came here and gave it joyfully. Some came here seeking laughter. Some came here and created it. Some came here seeking learning, growth. Some came here and provided it. Some came here looking for a sense of security, a safe haven. Some came here and provided it. Some came here seeking an escape from hectic lives. Some came here and enabled them to have it. Some came here seeking the joy of community. Some came here and created that. Some came here wanting to serve. Some came here and made it possible for them. We thank them all. Back in December, when I was thinking about Sunday service topics in February, I thought we might need some time to reflect on this strange new world we find ourselves in since the U.S. presidential inauguration on January 20th, and how to respond to it as Unitarians. I looked. There is nothing in the history books that tells us quite what to do. No one alive today has ever seen anything quite like this before, leaving many of us scratching our heads and wondering in the language of the military's phonetic alphabet, Whiskey, Tango, Foxtrot. But the best laid plans for this Sunday were trumped, in a manner of speaking, a week ago, last Thursday, when a friend, a Catholic deacon who has been working with the Indian students, called me. He told me the students had gotten deportation orders that day, and would we consider giving them sanctuary? He had not been able to work through the Catholic hierarchy to arrange it in a Catholic parish yet, and they were out of time. That's when he thought of us. He knew of my commitment to radical hospitality, or what I like to call the sacrament of hospitality. I explained that while we didn't have bishops we needed to convince, we were strongly committed to democratic processes, which were not always able to move quickly. But I would at least put it to the congregation through the management committee, giving them an opportunity to respond. Many of you may have been here last Sunday when the request was thoroughly, very thoroughly, discussed in an open 3-hour meeting of the management committee. While I trusted that we would reach a positive consensus, because that's just who we are, I was pleasantly surprised that the management committee reached unanimity, which is not always who we are, to give our support to the students and open our building to them. It was an act of radical hospitality and made me very proud to be your minister. But it only got better. Monday, the students entered our sanctuary, as did Quaish, who's kept it lively. They were anxious, as most of us are, when coming into unfamiliar territory, and worried about being sitting ducks for immigration officers. But there were members of the congregation here to welcome them warmly and to listen to their stories. They were considered family, and members of the congregation took them home to their families at the end of the day to give them a bed. The next day, you could see the signs that radical hospitality was building community. People who initially planned to give one day during the week to be here ended up being here every day. For their parts, the students were ideal guests and exceedingly grateful. They showed it practically. Each night when they went home with their hosts, the church has never been cleaner. They in turn extended hospitality to the many who came from the community to bring them food and encouragement. The media that came to report their story, and there were many, I think I totaled 20 interviews with the media, came to know us by name and clearly expressed their sympathy and support. Even when they didn't need an interview, they would call me to see how the students were doing. Through them, the spirit of hospitality was extended throughout Aotearoa, New Zealand. By yesterday, when we held a rally to support the students, we had over 150 people here, many of whom had never been before and didn't know a Unitarian from a Trinitarian or a Lunitarian. They were here to ask the government to rescind the deportation order. Afterwards, the Indian and Sikh community brought enough food to give everyone a feast. Jesus, who was no neophyte to feeding large crowds, would have been impressed. It made my heart glad to watch those gathered getting to know each other over a meal. As one person mentioned to me, there was a heartwarming buzz in the room. While we don't know if we will achieve our goal for justice, although I expect we will know shortly, none of us will be the same after this week. It has been transformational. These events have been woven into our history as a congregation and into our very souls. I suppose the reason I marvel at this week's events is that I know how difficult radical hospitality is. As human beings, we are wired to stay in our comfort zones. There is a reason the phrase birds of a feather flock together is a cliche. We are most comfortable with people who look like us, grew up like us, have the same food preferences, like the same music, talk like us, vote like we do, think like us, have experiences to which we can relate. Hospitality demands we move out of our comfort zone to make an effort to understand and celebrate our differences. Who needs that when there are plenty of people we can find who we can relate to easily? Many years ago, I did my research for my master's thesis that looked at the attitudes of those who lived in de facto segregated situations versus those in integrated situations. It was at The Ohio State University, where entering students were assigned to residence halls regardless of race. So most first-year students were in integrated halls. For their second year, they could choose where they wanted to live. As a result, there were residence halls that were predominantly African American and halls that were predominantly white. In the white halls, I tested attitudes about blacks in general, and vice versa in the black halls. I discovered that the attitudes were overall positive, but not exceedingly so, about the other race. Further questioning found that not having to relate to the other group made it easy to express politically correct attitudes. However, in the integrated halls, I didn't find attitudes were politely positive. Both black and white students were either strongly positive or strongly negative. Few, if any, were lukewarm. Further interviews uncovered that the attitudes were not surprisingly shaped by positive and negative experiences with the other race. What was surprising was that the experiences were not all that dissimilar to each other. The difference was in the openness, or otherwise, of the student to understand and welcome the other into their life, their willingness to work through their discomfort in an unfamiliar situation. But sadly, the open students were not the majority. Robert Putnam, a Harvard political scientist, best known for his book, Bowling Alone, explores the growing isolation of Americans. He wanted to find out what happens when diverse groups of people live in the same area, as opposed to a homogeneous group of people living in an area. He found that when people are near people unlike themselves, they tend to hunker down. Not only do they not interact as much with people who are different from themselves, but they don't interact with their own group as much. They watch more TV. They have fewer friends. They're less likely to work on community projects. The level of trust and interaction is greatest when people are with others who are most like them. When these results came back, Putnam distrusted what he saw, and so did his colleagues. So he spent years more checking out his data. 30,000 people were interviewed. And yes, he found he was right. Putnam, a dyed-in-the-wool progressive and very pro-diversity, nevertheless concludes, in the face of diversity, most of us retreat. Another study shows that churches that try to bridge social division have a tough job. Paul Lichterman, in his book, Elusive Togetherness, says that churches that attempt to bridge strong social differences mean well, but are most often not successful. He says when churches, in his study, tried to do outreach, differences in social customs and in styles of relating made it nearly impossible for faith-based efforts to close the gaps. He said that the single group in his study that did succeed constantly evaluated and reevaluated what they were doing and why they were doing it in order to understand their own cultural underpinnings and those of others. In other words, they paid close attention to how they were talking, interacting, and engaging on a daily level. They learned to approach others as partners rather than as people they were helping. I think this is exceedingly important. Success, in other words, lies not so much in ideology or organizational structure as in the detailed content of our conversations. So what does that mean for us as a church? We are committed to being a welcoming community. We say we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of all. And yet, we are human beings. And we have the same challenges that all human beings have. We feel more comfortable when we're with people we know. We feel less comfortable when we are with people who have different ideas and interests, different cultural assumptions. Tribalism is still strong, and we need look no further than our own congregation. Yes, we overcame it this week, and good on us. Proud of us. But what about next week? My hope is that our takeaway from this week is that the gift of radical hospitality offers us something meaningful and life-giving. It is worth moving outside our comfort zone. Most congregations have debated this, but not tried it. Our experience this week can be an encouraging word to them, but more importantly, it challenges us to say, whiskey, tango, foxtrot, and keep at it. Amen. I want to offer this meditation by Michael Boblet. May the walls of this house be strong in the face of storms, whether of winds or of words, whether of thunder or of tyranny. May the windows of this house be clear to the world's light, whether of dawns or of daring, whether of sunsets or of stillness. May the foundations of this house be firm upon the good earth, whether of soil or of sharing, whether of bedrock or of behavior. May the doors of this house be wide to all that come from afar, whether poems or people, whether songs or strangers. May this house embrace, like a graceful chalice, the flame it cannot define or limit, as a heat enshrines hope larger than its beating walls. Our closing words. What does it mean to bless? To bless does not mean saying magical words, changing the mind of God, or altering the course of the cosmos. To bless does mean reminding each other of our gifts, remembering the wisdom that is within us, and recalling our common purpose. The choices we make and the work we do are how we bless each other and the world. May the words we say and the songs we sing name the wholeness we are and still yet seek.